reflective writing, a part of the 4-part series of the Building Your Writing Foundation workshop. This is sponsored by the Academic Success Center, and we'll be exploring how to go about writing a reflective work. Today's agenda will be addressing these points or questions. 1, what does it mean to reflect? What does it mean to learn? How can I write about what I have learned? Examples of reflective writing. Taking a look at this lovely picture, the question that comes to mind is, what does it mean to reflect? Here we see a reflection of a scenery, and it takes us to what we're here to address today. To reflect means to consider something after it's happened, to look back, to throw backlight from a surface, or to see something in new light. What are reflective writing assignments? Throughout your studies at the college, you will be asked at some point or another to write a reflective assignment. What does this require from you? You will need to think back on an experience or an event and describe it in your own words. You will need to critically think about that experience as well as analyze the events that happened. The third part is explaining. You will need to explain on what you will do differently if such an experience happens again, and why would you be doing that differently. So reflective writing enables you to think back as well as project for future experiences. Why do instructors assign reflective writing tasks? Why should we bother writing a reflective work? Our instructors encourage us to do reflective writing tasks because it demonstrates a proof of learning. It shows that learning has taken place, learning has occurred, and the student has benefited something from that experience. So we go on to asking the pertinent question. What is learning? Learning is a relatively permanent change in behavior or thought process, which comes as a result of experience. Your experience may be an interaction with somebody. It could be an observation. It could be reading a book, going for a walk, watching a documentary, building something, creating something, baking, traveling, or participating in some form of sport or another. Just about anything you can think about can become a learning adventure. Question that you can ask yourself and reflect on is to think about the things that you have learned so far in your RRC program. What type of things have you learned so far as you take your courses? Generally, learning can be categorized into 3 distinct areas. We have the knowledge part. That's something that you know, something that you are sure of. For example, you will know the name of Canada's Governor General. You also have the skills part. That's something that you are capable of doing, something that you can do. For example, you might be able to change a tire, you might be able to fix a gadget. And then we have the third area, attitudes, which we can also call values. What you believe in, or what you accept, what you value. For example, you could value the importance of play for young children. Knowledge can also be in terms of things that you know about RRC, for example, the location of the library. It could be a skill, such as knowing how to navigate the hub, and it could be attitudes. What attitudes do you have towards checking your mails every day, checking your emails, and being on top of your tasks and assignments? In reflective writing, the learning is what is most important. The highlight of reflective writing is the learning that has taken place. You acquire new knowledge, new skills, new attitudes. Something that you did not know before, but now know, or now do, or now believe. The experience has taken you from not doing something before to being able to do it differently next time. In academic writing, we typically reflect on two things. Reflections can be based on things that have happened, experiences, events, or ideas or theories, theoretical assumptions, and things that have been stated as near facts or theory. So we ask the question, what could be the difference between the two things that we reflect on? Well, what's the difference between experiential knowledge and theoretical knowledge? There is a structure for reflective writing, and in every reflective writing, this structure has to be put in place, it has to be considered and followed through. You have description that leads on to interpretation, followed on by the final point, which is the outcome. So the structure starts out with description, describing the experience or the theory, interpreting it, and the outcome, the results of that. When doing reflective writing, under the description part, you will need to explain, you will need to give a good detailed description of your topic of interest. You will be given the information about what happened, why are you talking about it, or why are you writing about it. The goal of the writer here isn't to share their own opinion. When you are describing, you describe in terms that are not verbose, or you're not giving unnecessary details. You're giving only information that the reader needs to know. The reader needs to understand the context and nothing more. Basically, giving the reader just enough to get good and clear understanding of the topic. Interpretation. When it comes to interpretation, as a writer, you are analyzing the topic. You will be displaying your critical thoughts. You will be displaying your ability to think critically on the topic or idea that you have chosen. For the outcome, you will be focusing on proving that learning has actually occurred. You will be expressing what you will be doing differently next time if you have similar or same experiences. This outcome would be evident as you make future choices, as you make decisions in future. How do you identify a reflective writing assignment? Sometimes you would get assignments that require you to explore it in a reflective way. You need to do a reflection before you go about writing this assignment. It could come in terms such as, think about a time when, consider what we discussed during last class, reflect on your experience in light of your recent learning, review the content from last module, discuss something that you learned. So you will have to think back, look back, recall, and try to remember the things that you are being referred to. We also need to highlight that there are different types of reflective writing. It could be personal and it could relate to other aspects such as writing a book report, an article review, discussing a board post, or writing a learning journal. Here we'll be looking at 2 examples of reflective writing. In each example, we'll have the task of determining if the writer is reflecting on an idea or some ideas, an experience or some experiences. We'll all be identifying the 3 parts of reflective writing, which are description, interpretation, and outcome. We have an example here, and for this example, we'll be reading this short writing. I recently read the book 7 Falling Feathers by Tanya Talaga. This book covers the deaths of 7 indigenous teenagers who all came to Thunder Bay from remote communities to attend high school between 2000 and 2011. An inquest into the deaths concluded in 2016 with 131 recommendations. At the time, I didn't realize how limited the schooling options were for Indigenous youth in many parts of Ontario, as well as in my province, Manitoba. This is significant because many Indigenous teens must travel far distances, often stay in strangers' homes, and navigate brand new communities just to continue their education. These situations can leave youth vulnerable which was the case for the 7 young people Talaga discusses in her book. Reading this book has significantly developed my understanding of our current education system. These stories have made me realize that a lot needs to change so that all children have access to the human rights of education. This understanding is essential to me as an educator and as a Canadian, because education in Canada claims to be and should be equitable and safe for all. So we can ask ourselves this question: is this writer reflecting on an idea or an experience? Are we able to identify the 3 parts of reflective writing, which are description, interpretation, and the outcome? We have here ideas. The author here is writing about an idea that they had or they have. So that's shown in the description part of the writing. Here the author describes their experience, describes what happened to the 7 Indigenous teenagers and where they came from, where they came to, and how that happened. So the author gives a description of that. The second paragraph shows the interpretation. The author gives an interpretation of their experience, breaking it down into different parts, using different sentences to interpret that experience. The author goes on in the third paragraph to highlight the outcome, the results, the impact, and the influence of the writing on the future or their next steps. We have another example here. Example 2. During my 4-week practicum at Child Care Center ABC, I worked with 3 to 5-year-old children. I was responsible for preparing and leading the children in an activity every day, ranging from outdoor play to arts, from music to read alouds. For me, the most important experience in my practicum was learning how to plan activities in advance. Previously, I thought all children were similar in their ability levels and interests. This might be due to my lack of experience working with this particular age group. During the practicum, I planned an activity that I remember doing as a child. I quickly noticed that most children in my center were too young to use a paintbrush, and that I should have planned a finger painting task instead. Subsequently, I did not realize that my supervisor suggested a zoo theme for this activity because she knew the children were interested in animals. It hadn't occurred to me to reflect on the children's interests. Because of this experience, I have significantly developed my ability to plan a lesson as an early childhood educator. I now know to take into account children's developmental stages and general interests while preparing lesson activities. This skill will be essential as I enter year 2 of the program and eventually the workforce. So here, the writer explains that learning has taken place. We ask ourselves the question again: is the writer reflecting on ideas or on experience? So the writer answers these questions. What do I do now? What do I know now? Or what do I believe now that I didn't before? How does this affect my future? Here, the writer has picked up some knowledge. Learning has taken place in terms of describing the experience, interpreting the experience, as well as the outcome. What next steps am I taking? The learner, the writer, has seen things the way it was done, how the writer did it before, and why there needs to be some corrections or why there needs to be some adjustments. Breaking the writing down into description, interpretation, and outcome helps the writer see that there could be different things could be done in a different manner in future circumstances. In this second reflective writing example, the description is short. It catches the reader up, gives them the context to understand what happened. The writer isn't sharing their own opinion here. It is an objective section. It's answering the question, what happened? In the interpretation part, it is a bit longer than the first example that we had. Here, the writer displays an analytical skill, thinking deeply and critically about the situation. Here, you can ask yourself as a writer and say, how did this affect me? Why is this relevant or significant? Are there other perspectives to consider? And then he lands on the outcome, where the writer explains the learning that has taken place. The writer is able to answer the question, what do I do now? What do I know now? What do I believe now that I hadn't before? How does this affect my future choices and decisions? Here, learning has taken place, and the writer has expressed that as they have gained new skills, ability to create appropriate, age-appropriate and relevant play opportunities for younger children. Also, the knowledge of the writer has improved, has been enhanced, because the writer has written there. Now they know what to prepare for, how to prepare for another experience in an early childhood setting. So we go on to summarize our points for today. We spoke about how reflective writing gives us the chance to look back at past experiences to inform better choices and steps for the future. We also talked about what our instructors are looking out for when we do reflective writing. They are looking out to assess if learning has taken place, what learning has taken place based on what you write. Through reflective writing, new things can be learned, knowledge can be gathered, skills can be enhanced, and attitudes even evolve better. Remember, no matter the type of writing you are doing, ensure to input a description of what you have learned that will cause you to think about things or impact how you do things differently next time. Finally, you follow the structure that we provided as you write your reflection. You have a section for describing what happened. You have another section for interpreting it, as well as the final part, which is the outcome. Following this model will give good structure to your writing. Thank you for your time and have a wonderful rest of your day.